So here's a question that I've been wondering, that I've been researching, but can't really find a satisfactory answer to. Okay, so the question is, why didn't God just make us in heaven? Why couldn't the world just be perfect as is? So a lot of people ask about the problem of evil, which is a reasonable question. And the question is, why is there evil stuff in the world? Why, if God is maximally good, why does God make earth so full of suffering? I mean, animals suffer, animals kill each other, bugs bite us, the weather can be a disaster sometimes, tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, and of course there's human sin, where people just do bad things and hurt each other. So why is there evil in the world? Well, I think there's a pretty satisfactory answer to that. And the answer is that, from what I understand, is that we need real stakes, real pain, and real suffering in this world to make things real. If there was basically nothing bad in this world, then we would already be in heaven. It would already be a perfect world. So even if a tiny bit of bad stuff happens, people would criticize that as a flaw in God's plan. So like, let's say Earth was perfect and you would go around, but you would stub your toe on a door or something like that, or you would accidentally get a splinter while chopping wood. People would complain and be like, oh, what? God is not really good because God didn't plan for this. Like, God should have made a world without splinters, or a world where I didn't have to wipe my butt, or a world where I don't get pimples or whatever. So having that pain and suffering makes it real, that it makes Earth, I guess, the life on Earth, kind of like a test. It's a very short test compared to eternity, of course, because imagine infinite amount of time compared to just 80 years on Earth or whatever. Even if it was a billion years on Earth, that's still 0.00001%. So I get that. I get that God potentially designed us to have this imperfect life on Earth as a way to build our virtue, as a way for us to choose good over evil. And I buy the argument that if he made everyone unable to choose evil, then good doesn't mean anything. So the argument is we don't really want to become robots. So imagine if God made you and you had to love, but you couldn't even choose to hate or not love. So is that really love? So on an abstract level, I kind of understand that. But then once you start getting into the two eternal destinations, so you have heaven and hell, of course. So eventually, from what I understand, people get divided into those two camps, and it's forever. And if you think about heaven is a place where I think most people would agree it's a place where you, one, do still have free will, and two, you cannot choose to sin, which sounds a bit contradictory. So if you have free will, isn't the definition of free will the ability to reject God? So if someone's in heaven and they can truly think for themselves, can they just get a really bad idea and be like, yeah, I'm in heaven, everything's perfect, but what if I just go and try to punch someone? And I know I can't really hurt them, but maybe I can go and just do something terrible. I don't know. What's the worst thing you can do in heaven? I don't know. Steal someone's stuff or just poke someone in the eyeball. I don't know how that works. Whatever the most evil thing you can do. Or maybe they have the freedom to use their voice and speak up against God and mock God or make fun of God in heaven. So that sounds pretty terrible. That doesn't make sense because heaven is supposed to be eternal and perfect. So sinning logically cannot happen in heaven. So those two things are a little bit at odds with each other. You have free will, but you cannot sin. So do you really have free will? And people try to reconcile that with something called the Beatic Vision. And they're saying, okay, well, heaven is special. Okay, so you do have free will in heaven, but because you're so close to God, you don't have the choice of sinning, and you don't want to sin. So there's no reason for you to choose to sin. And on the surface, you're like, okay, I guess that sounds perfect, right? It sounds perfect. I mean, you have free will and you can't sin. That's like the best of both worlds. So why didn't God just do that in the first place? So that's the basis of my question. And I haven't found a satisfactory answer for that. So I think it's just a mystery. So obviously we are finite creatures. God is infinite. And we have to trust that God does everything for the ultimate good. Well, we cannot criticize God's plan because God's plan is the best. I'm not saying that sarcastically. I'm saying that that's if you believe in what the Bible says, and that's the truth. And so we have to be humble and understand that, okay, we don't know exactly why. And there is wisdom behind the system that's being used. It's life on earth and then going to heaven and hell. But we don't know exactly how it works. So, but maybe there's another way that you might know to explain it. I would love to hear that, because this is some things that I'm just trying to reconcile in my head, and this one, just to me, the logic just so clearly butts heads with each other. It's like free will versus sinning. Like Adam and Eve sinned. Adam and Eve were basically, this is probably theologically incorrect, but they were basically in this paradise. They were in heaven, a heaven-like world where everything was going great, and then they decided to sin because God allowed the ability to sin, and He wanted this plan to take action, right? So he wanted to have this, I don't want to call it an experiment, but this little petri dish of earth to have Adam and Eve and all the events that took place, and eventually leading to the resurrection. So all this entire story of our human history was all planned. There were no surprises for God, right? It's not like God did something and He's like, oh crap, Adam and Eve sinned. Dang it. Now I gotta flood the world. Now I gotta send Jesus to earth. It's just total curveball. I didn't know that. That's not, as God knows everything, right? He knows the beginning and the end, and this is the maximal path that He chose for this to happen. And just, it's a lot of mysteries with eternity, after earth, after life on earth, and how heaven and hell works. And if you have any insights, let me know, because it's hard to wrap my brain around that kind of stuff.